absolutely delighted to introduce Luis von Ahn, who is one of our most innovative professors of computer science at Carnegie Mellon. In the early 1990s, Carnegie Mellon innovated in computer science by creating an Institute of Human-Computer Interaction, a discipline that uses psychology and design to figure out how computers can be programmed to not only be fast and reliable, but actually helpful to humans. Luis innovated even further. He studied how humans could be programmed to be useful and help computers. He invented CAPTCHA, the program that asks you to type in the characters that appear to be handwritten or drawn for security purposes, but behind the scenes, CAPTCHA is actually using your labor to help computers to be better at reading hand-drawn characters. He also invented a game called ESP, which is an incredibly clever game that recruits humans to help computers label images. And two remote players who can't communicate are presented with an image, for example, of a woman's purse or a handbag, and they're asked to label the image. And if their labels agree, they get points and they get a new image. And thousands and thousands of humans, including two of my daughters, played this game for thousands of hours, so thanks a lot for that. And if you think Google Images has ESP, you would be correct, because they bought it and have used it for many, many years. After receiving a MacArthur Foundation Genius Award, one of many, many awards Luis has gotten for being stellar, Luis used some of the prize money and funding from the National Science Foundation to do initial research for Duolingo, which is a language learning app that's now been used by over 40 million people all across the world. And in 2013, it was named an iPhone App of the Year and Android's Best of the Best. So Duolingo collects enormous amounts of user data and uses these data to continually refine its instructional approach. He wasn't trained as a learning scientist, nor a language instructor, nor as a specialist in machine learning, but now Luis has become all three. So please welcome one of the most creative and original thinkers, I think, in the world today, Luis von Ahn.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Yes, okay, good. So, I am from Guatemala. This is a public service announcement. That is where Guatemala is. And that is not where they keep the prisoners. That is Guantanamo. Okay. Now, when I was growing up in Guatemala, I wanted to be a businessman. And I, in fact, had an amazing idea. What I thought, I was 12, okay? I thought it was an amazing idea for a business. I thought I was going to be a gazillionaire because of this business. So, and here's the idea. It turns out it's a really bad idea, but here's the idea. What I wanted to do is I wanted to have a gym. Actually, I wanted to have a lot of gyms where the idea was that going to the gym was free. It was a free gym. How awesome is that? It's a free gym, but all the machines in the gym and all the electrical, all the bikes and everything were hooked up to the power grid, and we would sell electricity that was generated by the kinetic energy of people exercising. I'm not the first person to have this idea, of course, but at the time I thought I was. So this is what I wanted to do, and I thought it was an amazing idea. It turns out it's a really bad idea. For one, humans are actually very bad at generating electricity. And for two, actually, this is a little known fact, but the way gyms make their money is by having people not show up. So this didn't quite work out. So I was frustrated by that. I then decided to come to the US to study. I've left Guatemala frustrated, so I came to the US to study. And then I was fortunate that I co-invented a technology that has been used by literally billions of people and also hated by them, which are these CAPTCHAs. If you have ever had to type them, I'm sorry. So I invented that. Then I became a professor of computer science here at Carnegie Mellon. Then I sold 2 companies to Google. And then after that, I decided to work on the project that I actually really wanted to work on from the beginning. And it is a project on education. It's a project called Duolingo, which today has become the single most popular app for education in both iOS and Android platforms all over the world. Okay, now this talk is about 7 kind of tenets or ideas that I've been thinking about for the last 4 years that have to do with education, and that is kind of a manifesto of what I think about education and also what Duolingo thinks about education. So some of these things are just things that probably, I'm not saying that they're correct, I'm just saying you probably should just think about them And that's what I'm saying. Okay, so now my thinking on education started from the fact of where I'm from. I'm from Guatemala, and one of the few things about Guatemala that you should know, at least, is it's a very poor country. And a lot of people always talked about how education was an equalizer. It would bring equality to the whole world. But actually, I always saw education as a huge divider. Because what happens is the people that have money are able to afford the best education in the world. They can pay for themselves to go to Harvard. And then, therefore, they continue having money because they got a really good education. The people who don't have very much money can barely learn how to read and write, because the educational system in countries like Guatemala completely sucks. So they can barely learn how to read and write, and therefore continue being poor because they kind of don't really know how to read and write. Okay, so I always saw education as this big divider, and I wanted to do something to equalize this. So this is something that I wanted to do, and so I started working on a project for education, which was Duolingo. Now, I knew I wanted to work on education, but for me, education is very general, so I decided to work on just one aspect of education, one vertical. And it was one type of education that is huge throughout the world, and it is learning languages. It turns out that today there are about 1.2 billion people around the world learning a foreign language. Now, this market is actually very interesting. When I started looking at it, it turns out about 800 million of these 1.2 billion people satisfy three properties. First one is they're learning English. Second is the reason they're learning English is to get a job, or a better job, or further their economic life. And then the third is that they are of low socioeconomic conditions. Okay, so basically, the majority of these people are poor people learning English so that they can not be so poor. That's the majority of people learning a language, but it's ironic and it's funny that most of the ways there are to learn a language actually cost a lot of money. For example, in the US, there's Rosetta Stone. It's a program that costs about $500. In Latin America, as a competitor to Rosetta Stone, it's called Open English. It's a program that costs about $1,000. So the irony here is that most of the people trying to learn a language are doing those so that they can get out of poverty, but in order to learn a language, they kind of have to be out of poverty. So there's this kind of negative cycle. So this brings me to the first thing that when I started working on Duolingo, this is the first thing that kind of really it was important for me when we started working on Duolingo, is that the best education money can buy should be free, not a luxury. And we really do believe that in Duolingo, and this is why Duolingo is a completely free product. You never pay to learn a language with Duolingo. Okay. Now, it's a good question. If you're going to have a completely free education, you got to figure out a way to make money out of it, or somehow finance it. So this is where the idea for the gym, which didn't actually work out at the beginning, actually came back. So the question became, how do we make a free way to learn languages in such a way that it is self-sustaining? And I started thinking about this idea of the gym, and the question became, how do we get something out of the people that are learning a language? How do we produce something out of value, like electricity, out of the people that are anyways trying to learn a language? That was the question, and it turns out you can do that from people that are learning a language, and it is through translation. So here's how Duolingo finances itself. The way it works is that whenever you learn something on Duolingo, at the end of learning a lesson, for example, you learn food words. At the end, we say, hey, if you want to practice what you just learned with real-world material, here's an article that is related to food. It may be something from a food blog or a menu or something that needs to be translated, that somebody is willing to pay to translate this article, and you can translate it to practice what you just learned. Okay, so for example, CNN is one of our clients, where the idea is that they write all of their news in English, then they send it to us, then we actually send all of the news to our students who, when they're practicing their English, they're translating all of CNN into their native languages. And then when that translation happens, we send it back to CNN and they pay us for the translation. It's very similar to this gym, except as opposed to electricity, people are using their mental power, which is much better than the electricity because we're very bad at that. So this is what Duolingo is. It's basically a way to learn a new language while simultaneously you're translating stuff from the web. Let me play this 1-minute video that shows the concept a little better. So hopefully you can hear this.
It's a big world out there, billions of us trying to live, love, prosper, and make sense of our brief time on this planet. Since the dawn of humanity, we've been passing information from one person to another through a common language. Unfortunately, you can't communicate with others without knowing or learning their language first. A similar issue has manifested on the web, where text can be penned in dozens of languages, each of which demands a reader's fluency. We've developed an elegant solution to both problems, a way for you to learn a language for free, while at the same time helping to translate text from the web enabling a wealth of language-shackled information to be liberated for all of humanity. It's called Duolingo. Here's how it works. Let's say you're a native English speaker who wants to learn Spanish. We start by giving you a sentence from a Spanish website and asking you to translate it. Wait, back up. How can you translate a language you don't know? First, Duolingo only gives you sentences that fit your language level. Beginners get the really simple sentences from the web, and advanced users get the more complex ones. This way, everybody becomes a valuable translator. And second, if you're really lost, you can always see possible translations for words you don't know. Afterwards, Duolingo helps you understand and memorize the words you hovered over through educational examples. You can also vote on the quality of other students' translations, which helps you learn by seeing how others translated the same sentence. And because you create valuable translations while you learn, we return the favor by offering Duolingo completely free of charge. No ads, no hidden fees, no subscriptions, just free. To put the potential benefit of Duolingo into perspective, think about this. If 1 million people would use Duolingo to learn, the entirety of English Wikipedia could be translated to Spanish in just 80 hours. Duolingo. Learn a language while translating the web.
Okay, so that's the basic idea, and this actually, upon this thinking, this is something else, it's another tenet that I actually really do believe, and we do believe at Duolingo, that education should support itself, not lean on other people's funding. And the reason for that is because other people's funding usually comes with other people's ideas and influence, and we prefer to be just like that. And also, another reason for that is in a lot of countries, education is supported by governments, and unfortunately, I would say about 90% of the world's governments pretty much suck. So I think we can do a better job. Now, today, Duolingo is the most popular way to learn languages. There are, in fact, more people in the United States learning a language on Duolingo actively than there are people learning a language in the entire United States public school system. And just to show efficiency, we spend about $5 million a year supporting Duolingo. The United States spends about $2 billion a year teaching people foreign languages. Okay, so this is just in terms of efficiency. Now, one of the reasons why Duolingo is so popular is because we spent a lot of effort making sure that it is really good for mobile devices. And for example, this is the first time, so last year Apple chose Duolingo as their iPhone app of the year, and this is the first time that Apple has ever chosen an educational app for iPhone app of the year. Usually they pick games or like picture-taking apps. This is the first time they chose an education app. So this is another tenet that we also believe in Duolingo, is that education should be in your pocket. And not just in some building. I mean, it's fine that you can go get educated in a building, but if we really want to reach the whole world, it has to be in your pocket, because that is the only way to reach people. For example, at the end of this year, there will be more cell phones, more mobile phones, than there are people in the world. Okay, and in the next 10 years, the bottom people, the bottom billion, about half of them are going to have some sort of smartphone. So if you actually want to reach the majority of people, you should think about mobile, not just web. Now, another reason why Duolingo is so popular is because we spent a lot of effort making sure that it is really engaging. So actually using Duolingo feels a lot like playing a game. Actually, most people that when they talk about using Duolingo, they say playing Duolingo as opposed to using Duolingo. And this is what your Duolingo actually used to look like. But basically, learning a language on Duolingo is split up into skills, into these different units that we call skills. So for example, food is a skill, animals is a skill. And the way it works is at the beginning, there's only one skill open, which is Basics 1. But when you complete that, you unlock new skills. So it really feels like a game where you're unlocking new content. For each skill, we also have this strength bar that shows how well you know each skill. And that strength bar, if you do things correctly relating to that skill, it goes up. If you do things incorrectly relating to that skill, it goes down. And it also naturally decays. So if you don't do anything relating to that skill, it goes down by itself. This is to model the fact that you're forgetting things. Okay, so, and this, by the way, is one of the things that gets people coming back a lot to learn, because whenever the bar is full, that skill turns gold, and people want to keep their tree gold. That's what they refer to it as doing, keeping their tree gold. So people come back a lot to do that. Now, if that's not enough for people to come back, we actually have a lot of tricks to get people to come back. For example, we send them an email with our mascot crying. It turns out, so we did a lot of tests to try to figure out what is the thing that gets people to come back the most. It turns out guilt works really well. And we even tested the size of the bottle at the bottom. We even tested that and how many tears you should have. This guy is the winner. out of all of that. And the actual exercises, the way they look is, whenever you're learning a language, it's just little exercises that just teach you tiny concepts. And each time, and for all of our exercises, you can either get them right or wrong. And whenever you get something, and the types of exercises are, it may tell you to say something, and it tells you whether you said it correctly or not, or you may have to select the image of the boy or something. And whenever you get something wrong, you actually lose a life. So each lesson has 3 lives that we show as hearts. If you ever play the game Zelda, this is where those hearts come from. And if you get something wrong, you lose a life. And if you lose all 3 lives, you have to start the lesson over. Okay, so a lot like a game. But if you're able to do the whole lesson without losing your 3 lives, then you get points. And you're told a bunch of really good things, and you get points. And this is one of the things that gets people to really play a lot. So this is another one of the things that we believe in Duolingo is learning should be fun and not a drag. Okay, and that's one of the ways in which we get so many users. Now, when I started working on Duolingo, it was funny. I knew nothing about how to teach languages. And neither did my co-founder, who was a PhD student here at Carnegie Mellon, Severin. Neither of us knew anything about how to learn languages or how to teach languages. So what we did is we went to read a lot of books about how to best teach languages. We just read a bunch of books. But very quickly, we realized something funny about this. It really reminded us of books about diets. They all contradicted each other. So, with diets, some of them say, you should only eat meat. Other ones say you should never eat meat. It really was like that with how to best teach a language. Some of them said one thing, some of them said the other thing, and it really were directly contradictory with each other. So we had no idea what to do. So what we did is we kind of listened to some of what the book said, and we started with its own curriculum, our own curriculum. But then we realized we were in a unique opportunity to do something, which was to actually figure out what really was the best way to teach a language because we had so much data from people learning. So this is yet another of our tenets, that education should be based on data, not opinion. A lot of these books were about philosophies of different things, and when we were in a position, and we really were in a unique position when we had millions of users, that we could really figure out the best way to teach a language. So what we started doing is we started doing a lot of A/B tests to really figure things out. So for example, we wanted to know whether we should teach plurals a little earlier or a little later. We wanted to know that. None of these books could tell us that. So what we did is we just did an experiment with the next 50,000 people that signed up. It takes about 12 hours for 50,000 people to sign up to Duolingo. So for the next 50,000 people to sign up, for half of them, at random, we gave them plurals a little earlier than for the other half. And then we measured which ones make less mistakes, which ones come back more often, which ones have better learning outcomes, etc. And we just figured out that one of those was actually better than the other one. And then we started teaching it to everybody that way. And then we do that every single week. We do multiple A/B tests every single week to try to figure out what is the best way to teach languages. Okay, and so this is what we're doing. And because of that, this was about a year ago, somebody did a study of how well you can learn with Duolingo, and they found that you can learn 1 semester's worth of a college class of language education in about 34 hours, which is less than a semester of college education. So we're very proud of this, but I actually think we can do a lot better. This is comparing Duolingo against the classroom. And, here, the thing about classrooms, if you don't know this, you should really know this. This is the Bloom's 2 sigma problem. It is really good and really bad at the same time. Here's Bloom's 2 sigma problem. This has been measured in multiple different areas of education, and the experiment is the following. You compare the learning outcome, or you compare people that are in a classroom, a standard classroom, say of 30 kids or 50 kids or whatever, against the performance of people who have a one-on-one tutor. It turns out that people who have a one-on-one tutor perform 2 standard deviations. That's where 2 sigma comes from. 2 standard deviations better than the people in a classroom. Okay, so that means they're in the 98th percentile. Okay, so people who have a one-on-one tutor. So we know that one-on-one tutors are actually better than classrooms. But there's a reason why we don't do one-on-one tutors. It's just not scalable. To have a one-on-one tutor, we would have to have as many teachers as we have students, and that kind of doesn't work out. But I think this is one place where technology can really help, because your one-on-one tutor could really be a computer. And this is, there's a whole area of learning science that is really trying to figure this out. And this is something that we're not quite doing with Duolingo, but it's something that I want to do. And that I really do think that big data in general should be used to personalize education, not just to personalize ads. For example, we're spending I don't know how many billions of dollars on trying to figure out what is the best ad that we can give some person. That's great. People can make money off of that. But I think we should use exactly that same technology to try to figure out what is the best next exercise to give people. So this is one of the things we're working on at Duolingo. The other thing that we're working on, kind of for the future, and this This is a thing that I'm very excited about because it's also something that's related to Carnegie Mellon, because Carnegie Mellon is a partner on this. And it is, so this started as follows. So we teach languages. A lot of the emails we get say things like, thank you for teaching us a language. Thank you for teaching me a language for free because you couldn't afford it before. Now I can learn a language. That's really great. But I have a problem. I need to get a job or I need to get accepted into a school and I need to have a certificate that shows that I know English. Could you give me a certificate? And we used to get a lot of these emails of people asking for certificates. And then we started kind of looking into what is this whole certification business. There's actually a whole certification business certifying that people know a language. In particular, this only matters for English. So it's really certifying that you know English. It's a huge business. It turns out to be about a $20 billion a year business, certifying that you know English. And the way it works is that there are these tests. They're standardized tests that you have to take. And when you take it, at the end, you get a score that's certified that says, yeah, this is how well this person knows English. For example, to get admitted here to a university in the United States, if you're a foreign student, you have to take a test called the TOEFL. That test proves that you know enough English to come to the university. Now, there's a thing about all of these tests. All of them are kind of regional monopolies, and because of that, they're very expensive. So all of the tests, for some reason, I don't know if they're doing price fixing or what, but for some reason, they all cost about the same amount. They cost about $250 each. Okay, now, that sounds like, okay, it kind of sounds like a lot of money, but if you're from a developing country, $250, it's about a month's salary, which is insane, that's what you have to spend to certify that. And for example, I was just talking to President Suresh, who said that he actually had to take the TOEFL. And back then in India, the test cost $15. That was it, right? $15, but he actually couldn't afford the $15 because it was just so expensive. So this is a huge problem that international students have to pass through all the time. But it's not just the cost. It's also the case that the way you take these tests is you have to go to, it's like taking the SAT. You have to go to a testing facility to take the test. And so you got to go to a testing center. Now, the problem is these testing centers, first of all, you have to make an appointment weeks in advance, which is a problem. And second, they're not in every city. So if you don't live in one of those cities, you have to travel. And this is a huge problem. So what we did is we decided to make our own test to certify that people know English. The way it works is you take the test from an app as opposed to having to go to a certification center. And it costs $20, not $250. And there's a reason why it costs $20. We actually wanted to make it free, but there's a reason why it costs $20. And the reason is because, you see, the reason you have to go to a testing center when you're taking one of these tests is to make sure that you're not cheating. That's why you have to go to a testing center, to make sure that you are you and you didn't send a friend of yours, and also that there's nobody helping you. Now, if you're taking a test from an app, this is a problem. You may be able to cheat, but what we do actually is that we turn on, you have to take it with a smartphone. You turn on the front-facing camera, and then we actually record you taking your face and everything while you're taking the test, and also the microphone. So we record the whole thing, and then we send that recording to a proctor somewhere else that watches you take the entire test to make sure that you're not cheating and to make sure that you are you. And of course, we have to pay the proctor to do that. So that's why it costs money. So that's the basic idea. Let me play you this. It's about a minute video that also explains the whole idea of the test center.
Every year, over 30 million job seekers and students around the world are forced to take a test to prove that they know English or other languages in order to apply for a job or school. These tests can require paying an entire month's salary, traveling to a distant examination facility, and then waiting weeks in limbo for the results. We think there should be a better way, a fair way where those trying to get ahead aren't exploited. Duolingo, the free language learning platform, has created a test center app to give everyone equal access to jobs and educational opportunities. Now, anyone can conveniently certify their language skills from home on their mobile device. And for only $20, that's 1/10 the cost of existing tests. It's scientifically proven, remotely monitored by real people, and supported by progressive institutions around the world. Duolingo. Join the movement.
So that's the basic idea of this. We launched this about a month ago, and so it's about 20,000 people have taken the test now, and more people are taking it to certify their test. One of the hardest things about this will be really busting the monopoly. So trying to get people to accept our test as opposed to, say, accept the TOEFL, et cetera. And this is one of the things that we're working with Carnegie Mellon here, trying to really do it. And what we have to do, the burden of proof is on us. We have to show that our test is as good as the TOEFL essentially for foreign student applicants. And so what we're going to do is, in conjunction with CMU, we're going to do a relatively large-scale study that shows that our test is as good as the TOEFL. So that's what we're working on. And this brings me to the last tenet, and this is something that I think, this is one of the things that I think is probably the most controversial, and most people probably won't agree with this, but I really do believe it. And we do this with everything we do at Duolingo, we really do try to do this. And it is, we design for the student and not for the system. And this is important. So if you look at most educational technology startups over the last few years, they have decided that they're actually going to spend all of their time designing for the system. So they're designing for schools, they're designing for whoever, because that's where the money is. You design for where the money is. So they're trying to make, for example, something that will teach better Spanish to the way schools teach Spanish. We don't do that at Duolingo at all. We always design for the end user, not the middleman. So this is exactly what we're doing with the test center, for example. We looked at what was bad for the student point of view, not from the institution's point of view, and then we try to fix that problem. Same with Duolingo. We don't care about how the Canadian school system teaches French, or we don't care about how different school systems teach anything, because we don't want to be bound to how it is, however it is they teach their own thing. We decided that we want to teach the way we want to, because we think we can actually do a better job because of the big data that we have, and then maybe people will adopt our system. So we do that. I don't know if anybody else agrees with this, but we do this. We don't design for the system. And so that is actually all that I wanted to say. Thank you.
Could you please, Dan Atkins, University of Michigan, can you say more about the peer evaluation of the quality of the translation and the process by which these multi-translations converge to something that you, for example, send to CNN?
Yeah, the way that works is, so a single student usually is pretty crappy at doing the translation. So if we just send it to a single person, they're not very good at it. But what we do is we send it to multiple people, and they actually can see each other's translations, and it's a bit like a wiki, where they can edit each other's translations, but it has one extra item, which is that you can also vote on somebody else's translation. So if you see somebody else's translation and you think this is really good, you vote it. And the way it works is that whenever a given translation has been there for a while and has enough upvotes, then we say, okay, that translation is good. And then that's kind of how it converges. And what's the quantum? A sentence. One sentence. One sentence. So that's the quantum. Yes, but the thing is you can see actually the whole document at once. So you only vote on each sentence, but you can see the whole document at once. So people are pretty good at saying, well, given the previous things, I think we can change that. And at the end of the day, the results are, so that's all we do. And at the end of the day, the results are such that we send it to, it's good enough. I mean, CNN has been our client for maybe about a year and 3 months or so, and we haven't been fired. So, so it's good enough for that. Yes, hi, Albert.
Hi, Luis. Nice to see you again. Great presentation.
Thank you.
So there was, in the first panel, I'm not sure if you were here or not, there was a discussion of whether universities could be leaders or laggards in adoption and promotion of educational technology. You might be a case study here, at least in whether education. So are any educational institutions picking this up and
Yes.
using it? And how is it going, even though you designed, as you say, for the student, not the system? Case studies, even without names, might be very valuable to us.
Yes, so so definitely education institutions are using this. I don't have all the data because we ask so little from the users. We don't know. Our estimate is there are maybe 250,000 students throughout the world using Duolingo in schools. That's our estimate. What we know of, the government of Colombia is about to start doing it in a lot of their public schools. The government of Guatemala is already doing it in some of their public schools. And so that's for the learning part. And we definitely get a lot of emails from teachers, et cetera. So it's definitely there. That's from the learning part. For the testing part, which is something else that we really want to get adopted, we're talking to about 12 universities that are, none of them have universities, rightly so, are skeptical of whether this is as good as the TOEFL. But they are, over the next year or two, the idea is that to do tests with the admission cycles so that they start accepting this or the TOEFL. And as soon as they start accepting this or the TOEFL, I'm pretty confident that ours will win because it's a tenth of the price and you can take it and get results in 24 hours as opposed to wait for 8 weeks. So yeah.
I'll try this again. How do you deal with, I'm TJ Bliss from the Hewlett Foundation. How do you deal with copyright issues? Since you're pulling content from the web, you're translating it.
Yeah, for translating
most
stuff.
Most of the free content on the web is not actually licensed so that you can translate it legally. So how have you managed that?
Yeah, this is a funny thing. Copyright kind of sucks for us. But what we do is we only translate things that are either Creative Commons, in which case we translate it for free, and then we just translate it, or you have to upload your copyrighted content and we charge you. So for example, BuzzFeed is another one of our clients. Our students actually happen to love BuzzFeed. It's funny. But they upload it themselves. So if it's copyrighted, you have to upload it yourself, and we're going to charge you. That's the idea. We're not going out and crawling the web for it because we would get into a lot of trouble, although we would like to.
You may have simplified for the discussion, but it sounded like when you tried to do design work to test out the learning progression, so where you made a decision to change the place where you teach plurals,
yeah,
that you've made a decision that a singular learning progression should be applied to all of the students, as opposed to potentially varying it.
Yep.
Can you talk about that decision? Because I'm sure you didn't come to it lightly.
Yes, so this is where we are in the development of Duolingo. Right now, every student gets the same progression. I don't like that. We know that's not the best. Not just progression, there's all kinds of things that we need to personalize. We're not personalizing it yet. We're working, this is the main thing we're developing now, personalization. Right now, what we think we have is we have a single curriculum that we think is good for the aggregate. That's much better than I think, for example, the single curriculum that is used in most, say, educational systems throughout the world, which is also a single system. That's what we have, but we know, in fact, we can do better for certain, by doing different things. So what we want to do, so the next version of Duolingo, it's not really the immediate next version of Duolingo, probably about 6 to 9 months from now, the way it's going to work is that when you start, it's going to first ask you a couple of questions. So it's going to say, what do you want to do? So it's not just about learning English. Why do you want to learn English? Do you want to, because you want to get a job? Is it because you want to take a trip? So what do you want to do? That's the first thing. Then the second thing, we're going to say how much time you got. All right, good. Then the next thing, we're going to do a tiny, maybe a 5-minute test to try to figure out roughly how much English you know or how much the language it is that you know. And then we're going to spend some computing power, and then we're going to design a curriculum, basically, that is just for you, based on that. So that's where we're going, and that's where we want to be. We're not there yet.
Luis von Ahn from Microsoft.
Hi.
Again, as an amazing presentation, and as a domain, the results you're showing are just amazing. My question was more about, this problem in itself is really, really important to solve, but as you go to other domains, would you say, learn calculus this way or physics this way? What do you think, where would you say this approach is appropriate, and where would you say, something totally different is needed as we look at the problem?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that we grapple with all the time, because what I actually wanted to do when I started was I wanted to do education, not just language education. But we started by just with one vertical, and I think it was the right call. If you look at it for example, now we have more active users than Coursera, Udacity, and edX combined. So I think, and they teach everything, whereas we only teach one thing. So I think it was the right call to really just concentrate on one and really try to get it right. And we're nowhere near getting it right. I think we're, 5% of getting it right. But we're going to start going into other verticals. I think one that we really like a lot, there's a few. There's a couple that we like a lot. One is teaching coding. We're not the only ones. There's a lot of people trying to teach coding. And another one is basic literacy. These are two that we like a lot. I don't know which one we're actually going to go for, but we are going to do other verticals. I think this approach applies for a lot of things. I don't know if it'll apply for everything, but I think most of these tenets, they're general enough that I think they definitely, it should be mobile. For example, this is one of those things. Whatever you do, it should be mobile. So all of these things, I think it applies, but I think we may have to do a lot of changes for that. Right now we're extremely fine-tuning language, and I think when we start with anything else, we're going to be, because of all the technology that we've built, we may be, 20% of the way there for something else. But we'll have to do the other 80% because there's a lot of fine tuning for that.
Okay, thank you.